Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing New.
Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Body Bag series. And today we expose the haters of Canelo Alvarez, Anthony Joshua, and Ryan Garcia. And you know, we got to keep that same energy when we talk about all the fighters. And at the end of the day, it's only facts, never feelings. And look, let's just break down the first idiot. And we start with Mo. And Mo states, Yellow Canelo won't fight Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andre, David Benavidez, or Caleb Plant. Talk about, he will beat anyone from 160 to 168. I just named 4 fighters he would easily lose to. Now, this is from Mo. Now, Mo, I'm just going to debunk your whole statement. The first thing we're going to do to debunk your whole statement is we're just going to look at all the facts. The fact is, Caleb Plant absolutely ducked and turned down an offer to face Canelo Alvarez. That's already written and documented. So if it's so easy, why wouldn't he even take the fight? You've been debunked. How could he be, avoiding or not looking to face a guy like David Benavidez when David Benavidez already had a 2-fight plan set up, and he stated multiple times the fight that he wants, his main priority is Caleb Plant. He also stated that he had to fight Caleb Plant before he even would consider a Canelo fight, and before he could face Caleb Plant, he had to face his mandatory, which is Avani Yildirim. So Yildirim, then Caleb Plant was his 2-fight plan before he would ever consider a Canelo Alvarez fight. So what are you talking about? So Caleb Plant, that's been debunked. David Benavidez, that's been debunked. And Jermall Charlo has already turned down an opportunity to fight Canelo Alvarez. You've debunked yourself yet again. And Demetrius Andre has already stated multiple times he does not want to face Canelo Alvarez behind closed doors. Those are his words, not Canelo's. He's never said he didn't want to face Demetrius Andre behind closed doors. Demetrius Andre said he didn't want to fight Canelo behind closed doors. But Demetrius Andre's own promoter, Eddie Hearn, stated, and I quote, "I feel Canelo will fight either Demetrius Andrade, Callum Smith, or Billy Joe Saunders." So why would Demetrius Andre, own manager and promoter Eddie Hearn, state that Canelo has a chance to fight Andrade? Then that means Canelo Alvarez is considering that fight. You've debunked yourself again, you idiot. Let's keep it going. David Williams states, Gary Russell called out Ryan Garcia. I bet you $100 to 1 that Ryan Garcia won't fight Gary Russell, who called him out because Ryan Garcia is afraid, just like the rest of the so-called champions. So Ryan Garcia is afraid of a guy from 126 pounds? A guy who has a reach disadvantage, a height disadvantage, who does not have the same power or speed that Ryan Garcia has. So Ryan Garcia is scared of that guy. That makes zero sense, and only an idiot, a moron, and a dummy would say it. But let me break it down further. Gary Russell Jr., what did he do? Called out Adrian Broner, stating Adrian Broner can get it. What else did Gary Russell do? He called out Vasily Lomachenko, said he wants the rematch for himself, not the fans or the media. He has a lot to prove. He even stated that he would knock out Vasily Lomachenko. Those are his words. Gary Russell Jr. again calls out Terrence Bud Crawford and stating that, I've already reached out with a contract offer, hasn't heard word back. So you know what Gary Russell doing? You know what he's doing? He's clout chasing. That's what he's doing. He's calling out all these named fighters, and he's trying to get some attention and fame. That's all he's doing, instead of fighting all the smoke that is sitting currently in his division. We got to be honest and unbiased. Gary Russell Jr. is looking for a retirement check. Let's keep it going. Brian Petro states, you do know Anthony Joshua was stopped by Andy Ruiz, right? And this is when we name Anthony Joshua the #1 heavyweight in the division. So to answer your question, Brian, you do know that Anthony Joshua dominated Andy Ruiz Jr. in the rematch, and Andy Ruiz Jr. proceeded to making excuses as to why he lost. See, this is what happens when you talk about casual fans that simply don't understand or know boxing. Anthony Joshua put on a boxing clinic and a masterclass display against Andy Ruiz Jr., and immediately after he lost, he started making excuses as to why he lost. And also, speaking of your #1 in Tyson Fury, this guy is the same guy who put Tyson Fury at #1. Anthony Joshua never failed a drug test for an anabolic steroid, which would taint any of his major victories, such as a Vladimir Klitschko victory. We got to be honest and unbiased. Anthony Joshua's also never struggled with the bum like Otto Wallin. We got to be honest and unbiased. And we also see that Anthony Joshua has consistently fought the best competition. He hasn't been fighting guys like Otto Wallin, Tom Schwartz, Sefer Safari, Francisco Pianeta. All of these guys are cab drivers, Uber drivers, hot dog vendors. That's who these guys are. Anthony Joshua's been fighting top-level fighters like Andy Ruiz. That's who he's been fighting. That's a top-level fighter. He's been fighting guys like Dillian White, Carlos Takam, Joseph Parker. He's been fighting the cream of the crop. Vladimir Klitschko, what are we talking about here? This guy doesn't have 2 fights on his resume and that's it. He has a multitude of fights. That's why he's the #1 heavyweight in the division. Once again, it's facts, never feelings.